staff? So you're limited in training staff? Like
Everyone's
having
to
And
train.
space to train with that many, yeah.
None more you.
Oh, she's typing. That's why.
This is a living document. I've added your.
Can I add something similar with that? So I'm trying to work with one of our sheep who's very careful about going in the hallway and being on the scale. But I have to get him in a very specific stall with no one else sometime during the day. And so that's part of just coordinating, like getting him in the exact right place. Yeah.
It's not even like I can help you, just give me a
No.
second.
And then he just goes on learn.
Also, if they're social animals and it's, you'd almost have to do a separate training step to get them comfortable being separate.
Yes, especially the sheep.
Yeah, and our work house.
Yeah.
What, you feel like you're alone?
No. Duke is the best about being alone, but the others freak out.
That was fun to watch. So, time, too many animals, too little space, or inappropriate training space.
Yeah.
And I added yours at the bottom because it seemed so kind of focused. So, any other general things?
Lack of confidence. Lack of confidence.
Lack of confidence.
I would add,
So maybe enough skilled staff?
No,
Enough
more,
staff,
maybe
enough
staff.
skilled staff, two different things. The other thing that I thought about is, you know, I call it flexibility in operations, but if you have to have animals on exhibit at a certain time, that locks you into, well, we have them in the back in the morning, so we have to do training in the morning when a gazillion other things are happening. Sometimes when you have access to animals is the busiest time and the most difficult to fit training in. And then, I don't know what to call it, so special needs or fearful of particular situations and the time to deal with those kinds of things. Anything else?
Other priorities, so for our big herbivores, browning ones.
Margaret, probably competing priorities as well. I need to train this, and I need to train this, and I need all three of these things are priorities. It's not just this enrichment or meeting.
Yeah, it seems like it can be summed up just by saying competing priorities.
Many, many, many. Okay. All right. Those are great. Anything else you want to add? I can go back and add it in. But I think, you know, I mean, this is essentially problem solving, right? So we have to figure out why our problems exist and then how can we address them. So to me, I need to know when I'm trying to think through this and figure this out, whether I'm you on the string every day or me looking kind of more from the outside in. Why do we have these problems? Certainly everybody has the issue of time constraints. And in the foreseeable future at least, they're probably not going to change all that much. I mean, I know the departments are being kind of switched around and some of you might be changing areas and maybe that'll make your lives better in some ways. Maybe you'll be faced with new and different challenges. But I think stepping back and sort of recognizing all these things that you pointed out are great. And I guess with the idea of try not to be overwhelmed, but how can we tackle each of these things? So thinking about the time, issue, which is always the biggie. We can't really make more time, but can we be more efficient and proficient in how we use the time we have? You know, training occurs all the time, right? Anytime you interact with an animal, that animal is taking away some information. Training occurs all the time, whether you do intentional training with your whistle and your target, or whether you're just giving out breakfast. There is some sort of information exchange happening. Information exchange is communication, is teaching and learning, is training. So it's always happening. And we've talked about this in several of the areas where I've worked already, is taking advantage of every opportunity that you have. So knowing that training always happens, you have to feed the animals. Most animals are getting some food, usually AM and PM, maybe in the middle, some, like the monitor, eats 3 times a week. But, you know, at some point you are providing that animal with some sort of resource that they want. That's an opportunity. Always have your whistle, always have your clicker. Anytime you give an animal food, you can train it on the bridge. Because you've got to give it food, that's a perfect opportunity. If you don't have, there are certain things that I guess you don't have to set aside a training session for. So you can just, you know, bridge training is super easy. Except maybe for birds. They're having a difficult time. But, you know, I think finding the opportunity is really pretty easy if you think about it outside that scope of formal training sessions. Now, with like the vervets you have, or other social groups of animals, I say, oh, it's easy, you've got to feed them. But the flip side is, well, we've got these really subordinate animals, and they're actually not all that easy to access all the time. So you may have to think about how you handle those animals a little bit differently. But there is a lot of opportunity. Too many things up here still. I'm a big fan of goal setting, and I think over the past, since for a while when I was coming out here, I was spending more time in elephants. Now I've been back in the zoo for the last year maybe, and sort of assessing everything that's happening in the zoo, or not everything that's happening, it sounds real snotty. Some of the things that are happening within the context of training is what I really mean. And my earlier presentation, I talked a lot about targeting, because I have this overwhelming sense that targets aren't being used as comprehensively and thoroughly as they could be to help you achieve objectives. And another thing that I am sort of becoming aware of is there's not always clear goals. There may be, we want to do a blood draw, but everything leading up to that is sometimes either in someone's mind or not spelled out clearly, or maybe not thought all the way through. So I think that because all of this is really overwhelming, you have these things that you need to do, you want to do, they're good for the animals, hopefully they're fun, but it's still really overwhelming. You know, these are big tasks to train an entire group of monkeys, or whatever it might be. So to me, setting really clear goals and setting realistic goals and having kind of a general pathway of how you're going to get from A to Z is super helpful in being real and setting your priorities. And priorities might shift, but at least you can kind of come back to it if you have something really clear. So I really like having short-term and long-term goals, and we have the tier system in place, so that may help you with some of them. But rather than just saying, oh yeah, it's the tiers, well, exactly what does that mean for each species, because it is a little bit different. So I think having something kind of almost in your face as a reminder can be really helpful. Oh, this is what we've checked off, feel good about what you've done, and this is where we want to be in 3 months, 6 months, and a year. It's sort of, I don't know, maybe it's just the way my mind works, but I feel like it sort of helps me break things down and not feel overwhelmed. Because when you feel overwhelmed, you just shut down, and then nothing gets done. That's not good for anybody. So having goals for individual animals and knowing that the animals might all be in very different places in where they are, you may be able to make a lot of progress with one animal, but if that animal's cruising through tier 3 and you've got this difficult animal over here, maybe you need to refocus some to get through tier 1 on that more difficult animal. Any thoughts on that? Does anybody within your areas have like short and long-term goals written out and everybody in your team knows what they are, up to your supervisors and everybody?
Our zebras do. We've got short-term goals of what we're working on currently, long-term goals of future training that we're doing. We don't have specific steps written out because it changes all the time, but we do have training projects listed out.
And I'm sure you all have it in your mind, but somehow I think writing it out, and especially for each individual, can be really helpful, at least in my experience. I mean, it's certainly, there's lots of ways to do things, but I think that it can really help you focus your effort and not feel so overwhelmed. I think being prepared, sort of taking that notion that every time you interact with an animal is a training opportunity. So be prepared. Have your tools, have your targets. If you're desensitizing an animal to this, carry it with you. If you're acclimating them to it, you can just stick it in your pocket here, and every time you walk by, the animal sees it. So that's one step ahead, and you didn't even have to do anything. All you had to do was be prepared by having this, which is really important to desensitize animals
To
to.
add to their story for that, is
Yeah.
that we, again, big problem, we typically had 9 giraffe and 4 antelope, and they're all different levels and they all need different things, and kind of in the last year, we lost focus on training our easiest, most last on the list, no medical problems, nothing coming up kind of thing. We kind of stopped working with her, and then we realized it got to a point where even just medicating her, all of a sudden she didn't want to participate, she wasn't responding to her recall and anything. And so we went back as a team and we did what you were saying, is that every time we just walked by to go to the exhibit, we would grab a handful of weeds and we'd feed it to her. And every time we came by, we were like, oh, well, this is an opportunity. I have a volunteer, give us banana chur, and then just keep going, and that only took maybe 2 weeks. And then she was right back into like, oh, I want to engage with you, I want to participate with you, I want to do, and that was how we fit it in without changing the focus and without making like 20 minutes of a session with her.
Right.
Kind of fit it back in.
Yeah, that's excellent. Excellent. I mean, all those times, you're just walking by. Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah. So, this is just a little desens session, desensitizing this monkey to a needle, to the syringe, a couple of targets in there. These things don't have to be a 20-minute training session. You can do just a couple of responses with an animal, have them touch a target, show them the needle, show them the syringe, and keep going. So, again, you don't have to set aside 20 or 30 minutes for a training session. It can be super quick if you have access or when you have access to the animals. And although you may have the idea that you're going to give an injection or do a blood draw or something associated with a needle in a particular location, all of your training doesn't have to happen in that location. So you can still do a lot of the groundwork anywhere that you can access the animal safely. One of my favorite sayings is blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape. A person that I used to work with, she's fabulous, but anytime something would change, she was like, oh my God, but I have this plan for today, and no, I'm not going to be able to do that. She would flip out. I was like, just relax, it's all going to be fine, but this is totally the shifting priorities and things come up. So, this is, again, just personality differences in people. Some people like to plan out their day and hope to, really stick to that plan, and it can be upsetting if there's a change to the plan. And, we're all different. We all tolerate changes quite differently. But if you can be flexible, I think that, one, it'll reduce your stress level a lot if it does upset you when things are changing. And, we work with animals. Nothing's ever the same twice, which hopefully is why we, in part, love our job, because it's so dynamic. But we can take advantage of changes in the normal routine. If you have an animal, for example, that is upset by changes in the routine, there's a change, great opportunity to reinforce it. You know, something comes up, let's get some really good stuff because we know this weird thing's gonna happen today. Perfect opportunity to reinforce that animal for tolerating change. So if you kind of start thinking about these challenges as opportunities, maybe that can help you help the animals, if that makes sense.
Can anybody think of a situation like that where you have, you know, something that you think of as a distraction or an obstacle that you've been able to use it to your advantage?
So we used to focus training on, I'm gonna do this animal on this day and this day. And we'd come up to the giraffe and maybe that animal was the farthest away from where we needed them. And then we would spend a ton of time trying to move, 8 or 9 animals around is time consuming. So instead we decided, well, how about instead of making a schedule, let's come up, see where everyone is in the morning, and then opportunistically choose the individuals that are in the best place. Because they all need some kind of work. So that way, instead of trying to pull one animal from this yard and take 15 minutes to move it all the way down there, let's use the animal that's already here, and then we would kind of shape our schedule around what would be the least time consuming and most effective.
And still, instead of saying Tuesday and Thursday you get trained twice a week or something,
Yeah,
so you can
exactly.
still sort of keep track of it.
Yeah, we have a check
That way.
sheet so we can visually see who has gotten training when and who if we do need to change it and like focus, then that's what we're looking for.
Yeah. Perfect.
And I don't,
I was just gonna say, our monitor Hogan, he got fed at the same time and he knew what time it was. And we couldn't really enter the exhibit very safely with him up and pacing and walking about looking for us with the food. So kind of varying the time so that we could find him in a spot where he was more calm to actually get started with feeding him and doing things like that. Being flexible.
Perfect. And you're not creating those schedule-induced or predictable sorts of undesirable behaviors that you would from a really rigid schedule.
I was gonna say, with our warthog piglets, we actually were, once they started having access to the exhibit, we actually, almost on a weekly basis, we were changing how they were shifting because we were always reintroducing. And at one point, we even swapped which sides moms and piglets were on. So they got used to like, we go over here now, we shift over that way, added a lot more comfort with any change in how we shift. So even a shift that we hadn't done in a long time, I reintroduced that and they're like, yep, we walk down the hallway, it's totally cool because we remember doing this as a kid.
I think that's an excellent example of sort of the opposite of the schedule-induced undesirable behavior is right from the get-go, you built in a lot of flexibility. There wasn't a routine. I mean, another one of my favorite sayings, mantras is routine is typically bad, consistency is good. Because routine gets things like schedule-induced undesirable behavior, you get rigidity, lack of flexibility with routine. You know, a lot of times you hear people say, well, the animals don't like it when I change the routine. But a behaviorally healthy animal is responsive to the environment and can cope with changes, right? So and it's hard to not have a schedule. You have to work really hard to not do that. But the more flexibility you can build in from the beginning, one, it's going to make it easier for you to access the animals whenever you need to, but really it's also much better for their behavioral health and welfare. So I think that's another great example. And you know, as we just start expanding how we can do our day, I mean, you're still limited with the confines of your work day and work week and having animals on exhibit and things like that, but how within the context of that can we create more flexibility?
I think a couple of examples that came to mind for me too, and I don't know, I was looking to see if a Supreme Court person that would remember this was here, but you know, it used to be that the male chimp Moses was super freaked out about the lawn being mowed, and for a period of time we actually purposely did training sessions during that time because they were at a stage where they were very responsive to training sessions and it was a positive experience for them. So pairing those two ended up helping him with, you know, this mowing thing. And then the other example that comes to mind for me is with the zebras, and I don't know how this ever came to be, but you know, way back when, you know, the training session time was like the sacred time that, you know, nothing should go wrong. It should be the most quiet, peaceful time in order to have the zebra's attention. And then somehow somebody had the idea of, no, let's bring people so that it's a good behind-the-scenes tour. And now the zebras are, and have been for quite some time, very comfortable with large numbers of people, which of course is very advantageous for, you know, veterinary exam, all that kind of thing. So I think when we break away from the idea of, you know, training can't happen if it's noisy or there's a weird distraction or there's some behavioral thing going on, it actually ends up being more useful to us in the long term.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and I know I work with animals that were freaked out by the wind or the helicopters that would fly over. So, you know, if you always have a little bit of treats ready in your pocket or something, or somewhere close by, then you're prepared, like the mowing thing, to be opportunistic, which actually comes from there. To be opportunistic about, it's like I knew what was coming up, those kinds of things. So, yeah, I mean, one, you know, the zebra, the quiet, have to keep it quiet in the zebra area. To me, I always think of, like, again, back in the old days, oh, they're gorillas, yeah, these are gorillas. So what do we teach them to do? Freak out if there's any noise. So, yeah, I mean, and obviously you're not just going to want to throw all the noise and distractions at the animals at one time, but if you start thinking about it with either new animals or animals that are super sensitive to noise, start desensitizing them. You know, set up situations where you can desensitize them so that they're less responsive to things that are going to occur in the environment. And the more you desensitize animals, the more different types of things you desensitize them to, that begins to generalize, and they're not flipped out by things you haven't desensitized them to anymore. So yeah, being opportunistic, I think, is a really big one. You know, taking advantage of any time you interact with the animals. If you want to desensitize an animal to a second person and one of your coworkers walks by, hey, do you have 2 minutes to come, you know, I want you to step up right here and I'm going to bridge and reinforce the animal because they're flipped out by new people. You know, so you can do little things like that.
Yeah, Elephant Barn did that with String 9 a few times, like just, hey, can you guys come over here and be the extra people and the vet staff while we're doing this exam? And you know, that's exciting for us, but it's also really convenient for what they're doing. You know, they need those extra bodies, and it means a lot to the animals, not for us.
Yeah, and I know some of those sessions would be pretty long, but they don't always have to be long. I mean, literally, it might be you want to train an animal that it's okay for a stranger to step up within 5 feet of them or move their arms, you know. I mean, use your friends and coworkers as props. They can be very helpful, and again, it doesn't have to be a super long session. And I would say, I mean, you know, maybe the same is true for the vet staff. If you can grab them, I know they're probably rushing around all the time, but if you can grab them to just smell like a vet for 2 seconds. I just want to pair your vet smell with positive reinforcement, you know, whatever it might be.
Our techs have been very cooperative in being part of our training. The thing that I think we need to do to make sure that happens is coordinate with them ahead of time to let them know we're going to try to do training of this animal every Tuesday at 3 or something like that, and then like radio them the day before, that morning or something like that to confirm whether or not they're going to be there. But yeah, the vets is harder because some of them already have this like ingrained devil-like persona. But some of the techs have been wonderful, and they've gotten so much done with techs coming down.
And they also change their shirts, or they take the scrub top off and put on.
Not always.
It's taken some time to get through it, but so that, especially with the cats, because they smell, you know, the other stuff on them, and that cues them off more than the individual. But then having alcohol or, you know, betadine smells and that type of stuff during the training session, so they're not surprised when that actually happens, because we forget about that part. We focus on the behavior, but not all the smells and the sights and sounds and stuff that we can't necessarily replicate.
All the lovely that comes with the vet package.
And we started when we do the zebra barn, when we're prepping to do the hand injection or the full syringe injection for a knockdown, we started wearing the gloves and wearing the masks, and that's hospital cooperating with us and stuff. And that's when you're going back there, if you're not doing a training session, you have the 2 minutes to put it on. That's a big scary thing that if they've never seen anybody wearing that before. Now they're pretty decent to hospital gear all around.
That's a great example of acclimating them to those things.
It's one thing to add too about the grabbing your coworkers to help. I know that sometimes we just think, oh, well, I can't talk to, I can't grab this person, they're probably busy. But grabbing other people to bring into like different situations is just as enriching for the staff as it is for the animals. So, like I always, like for example, in Children's Zoo with Anthony's injection, we have everyone in the Children's Zoo staff knows how to help out with this injection. And it's kind of enriching for everyone to get go over to lemurs. I mean, there's a lot worse places to be than lemurs. And get a, handle lemur. I mean, it is not a great thing for him, but it's, it ends up being a somewhat enriching thing, and also great for staff development. So it's always something to think about. Don't be afraid to ask for other people. They'll often jump at the chance to come over.
We've actually used that, but with the grounds and like janitorial staff. Especially because they are not typically animal people, so they have different uniforms and they're usually really stiff and like, I've never seen a giraffe as close before, so like it brings a whole nother element. So like it's more of a stranger danger than maybe an animal keeper that kind of already knows how to stand near these animals.
And
they probably totally.
Well, and then and especially gives them a chance to go, this is why I pick up garbage every day. Helps.
And you're going to have to make their day by asking someone like that to do that. They're just so like, it's the tiniest little thing for us, but they're just like, oh my god, this is amazing.
Two birds, one stone.
Yeah. Excellent. Is there something else that you said, Adam, that just made me think a little ago? So, and I guess, in the end, we just have to get super creative and I guess keep a positive, open mind about where to find time and how to eke out little bits of training opportunities. If you're one person working with multiple animals, can you use enrichment strategies to keep one animal occupied so you get a few minutes with another one? Maybe it's not, oh, I don't have 2 trainers, so I can't do it today. That's unfortunate when you have time in your day, but because there's not 2 of you. So are there other things that you can do? Can you train separations? Because in the end, it's going to take time to train separations, but maybe you can train separations and then that opens up a whole host of training opportunities that didn't exist before because you're one person with multiple animals and now you can be one person one-on-one or one-on-two if you can subdivide the group. So to take time to train the separations, but then the payout comes later. So yeah, how can you do things like that? Use of facility. What I was really thinking of in that is, again, if you're one person with multiple animals, if you haven't station trained or separation trained or something like that, do you have a corner or a tree or some other sort of physical barrier where you could just sort of feed one animal over here that allows you to access another one over here? Are there facility features that could be helpful?
So within the last couple months with the lemurs, I've been trying to work with the male while having other females out. And my biggest problem is that I don't have a lot of bodies. So what I started doing is just that they each have their own little stump, and his is off to the side. And what I did is I got a really long target pole. So now when the girls are stationed at their stumps holding their particular colored ball, I can keep them engaged, but then he's also over there, touching his nose to the target, and then I can just kind of nonchalantly kind of toss him his reward, and the girls are like, oh, what happened over there? And then at the same time rewarding them for looking over and then coming back to their station. Perfect. So then it kind of created this, well, it'd be really nice to have a second person, but at the same time we're still doing a little bit more.
Yeah, great.
I think the other thing that use of facilities brings to mind to me too is to really examine for this issue of, okay, you don't have access to the animal. Do you really not have access to them when they're on exhibit, or is there some creative way that you could work with them on exhibit and not only increase your training period, but may also be something that is beneficial to the public?
Yeah.
I think the Looksong and the Stream 8 team have been very creative in getting access to the warthogs, since we had 10 and we don't all fit into the building, so we have gone between the warthog and hyena exhibits, and that side of the exhibit, we do some training at the front of the exhibit. We use a sag yard, went to the fence panels, had a discussion about, hey, are we allowed to take the slats out of this chain link? Is that okay? Then that would make more space for us. And being very creative in the night house as well. We have sheets in different places.
Over the wall.
Yes.
And the walls. Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up some great points there. If you have some areas of your facilities that, you know, there's slats in the fences or some other barrier that, you know, you feel like if that was removed, you could use that as a training space. I mean, I think that it's certainly, given what Colleen just said, seems like it would be something that you propose doing, right? You know, as long as facility integrity, containment integrity isn't compromised, or, you know, it's still a safe situation. I think that's a great example. You know, sometimes, like your example with the giraffe, sometimes we have animals that maybe they lose motivation, or they were good trainers and we've taken time away from them because we need to focus on something else, or an animal's just difficult to work with, maybe a very subordinate animal in the group, or an older geriatric animal that just doesn't seem very motivated. And when you have these difficult animals to work with, sometimes you need to shift your focus to the easier ones because it's more satisfying and you can get things done. And so those other ones sometimes can get left behind. So I think if you feel like, you know, you have these particularly difficult animals, really examining them separately. I'm thinking of the two, you know, the two vervets that are a little bit more difficult to work with, and we're not quite sure what they're understanding. Really almost taking them as kind of a separate problem-solving issue, and really examine that motivation and what's keeping them from, in their mind, being able to move forward with the training. But don't let those animals hold you back from doing other things. And on the flip side, you know, it's try not to just say, oh, they're never going to learn, and leave them far behind, because that's not good for them either. So again, getting creative about maybe examining why animals aren't engaged in the training, and trying to look at it from a different perspective. Earlier we were talking about problem solving. You know, it might be something that you want to get some of your coworkers who have nothing to do with those animals to do problem solving with you, because they're going to ask questions that you're so in the moment, maybe you're not even thinking to ask. So you can also use your coworkers in the problem solving process as well. And the final, I guess, thought on this for me was record keeping. You know, are records your friend or your foe? I love records. I love charts. I think most of y'all who have worked with me for any amount of time know that I really do love record keeping, and I really love charts because they're quick and easy. They're easy to complete. They don't take a lot of time. They're easy to go back and reference, you know, and look back and see what happened over time. And of course, they are quantifiable compared to adding handwritten notes. Much more difficult to go back and look at. But if you have record, you know, the bad side, what records shouldn't do is be so cumbersome that everybody spends so much time working on them, and oh God, another record sheet, another check sheet, or whatever it might be. So I think that you want to examine your records, look at them, see what's useful, what's not useful. Just because it's always been the way it is may not mean that it has to continue being the way it is. You can make record sheets that are temporary, maybe if you're assessing a particular problem or training a new behavior. Once that behavior is finished, you're not going to continue using that record. You'll just put it away. So think of records as something that should help you problem solve, be more efficient, be able to look back on your training and see what's working and what's making more challenges. And again, records can be temporary or permanent. And it doesn't seem to happen here, but some facilities where I've worked want to almost create a one-size-fits-all record sheet. And I think especially as we go towards tracks and what's the other one? Zims, thank you. Tracks and Zims, it's more difficult to have individually tailored record sheets, but I think there are tremendous advantages to not trying to make everybody use the same thing. Maybe there's certain bits of information that are consistent for your managers so they can assess what's happening, but it's really hard to have a one-size-fits-all record sheet. So if you find, and I have had some people say, I don't think here, but some people say, oh gosh, if I do training, then I have to fill out the record sheets, and the records take so long to complete, and they're so cumbersome and difficult. So it's almost takes your motivation away from doing training sessions. And like I said, I don't know that I've really heard anybody say that here, but to me, that's such a shame. So those were just some of my thoughts. I think to me, the biggest thing is really recognizing that absolutely anytime you interact with the animal, feed the animal, walk past the exhibit is an opportunity, and figuring out how to take those opportunities and kind of think outside the training session box. The training can happen at other times.
Does anybody have any examples they could share of that, where you've been able to find training opportunities outside of training sessions and it's worked well for you?
Well, being opportunistic, just like what Margaret was describing, is how I forged a relationship with the education parents. And walking out with a pocket full of sunflower seeds all day, every day. And that certainly helped build our relationship.
After many iterations of that training and then conferring with Leslie about kind of ideas of how to do it, utilizing morning check time to just hand feed. We were kind of already hand feeding, but then kind of taking it a step further where I could at least get everyone does a target and then you get your food, because an extra target even for that many animals is 2 extra seconds. Or the ones who open their wings readily, asking them to open their wings as you do morning checks, and just kind of, I'm already out there checking them and interacting with them and making it a thing where it's I get 1 rep of something in, even for them, and even 1 rep of something is helpful and really helped. And there were some vets who were very fearful, and they, instead of immediately going oh God, a person, they were like, oh, okay, and then they'd be scared, but they'd be, oh yeah, I get food.
Back to the warthogs. Before, we only had 3. Alice, fearful, very fearful of people, and in the night house is much more scary. And even on exhibit, we were challenging to trying to get her to come up the fence. The other 2 would come, we'd do a session. By the time she'd get up enough nerve to come close enough to the fence, we'd be done with the food. So we started adding, after the training session, the formal training session, scratches. Because both Frenchie and Simon just would relax. They weren't as and that allowed Alice to kind of get closer and still get reinforced by the time she came there. And even though some of the more formal stuff we would do in the night house to lean in with scratches, it allowed me to be able to see her tummy when she was pregnant, and also starting to lift her tail through the fence to look at her vulva. And even just today, bringing that behavior back, she'll let me lift her tail, rub her ears, things that outside of anywhere else could never do with her. So just scratching was a good thing.
Another example that comes to mind for me is taking a stationing opportunity. You know, there's been a number of species that I've worked with where stationing was necessary in order to be able to open a gate or move multiple animals, you know, holding a dominant or something like that. And I think that is a time where sometimes we get into autopilot where we're just basically tossing, you know, food to them to hold them there, but instead of doing that, you know, asking for those different behaviors that can be done, you know, while they're on their station, I think has been very useful.
We station the red-bellied parrots in the Savannah aviary because it's hard to count them otherwise. And also one in particular, Rufus, sometimes likes to get overeager for the food trays, and she has nipped a few people on the hand because she's also the bottom of the social structure. So she's brave enough to fly to the people, but the other parents will chase her off the place dishes. So she'd fly to us and want the food from us and fight people for not putting the food down soon enough. So we do station them first thing most of the time and have them on their stations, give them a peanut to fill her up a little bit, and also get a count on the birds.
Even our night keeper does it too. When he pulls, like when I shout at the night keeper, he does the same thing with Rufus. Make sure he gets on his station, then he gets his own. So like even the night keeper, he goes around and he has a couple of real quick behaviors that he does with a few of the animals around his shifts, which is, you know, great, you know, great for him, great for the animals.
One other thing that I know we were talking about again with vervets, and Andrea, when you said something about, you know, working with all the bats at one time, another sort of, and I can't remember if I had it in the presentation, which is why I'm bringing it up again, is, you know, if you feel compelled to work with every animal in the group, that takes a lot of time. So with vervets, there's 7? Yeah, so 7. So it takes a good chunk of time to try to work one-on-one with all 7 of them. So kind of getting back to the idea of we have 2 training sessions a week or 3 training sessions a week with each animal. As long as you get to each animal a couple of times a week, maybe you don't have to do them all at one time. So you can do a couple and it only takes a little bit of time, and then everybody goes out, and then the next opportunity you have, you work with a couple of the others. So there might be ways to divide it up. You know, if you're walking through all the bats and you don't have time to target every single bat, well, at least do a few of them, check off which ones you did, you know, then the next time you try to get a few different ones, something like that. So I guess, I don't know if anybody does, but if you feel like if I don't work with all of them, then, you know, they might get mad or whatever it might be, you know, you may not have time and it's not realistic. So at least get done what you can in a limited amount of time. And then you'll get to them all eventually.
There's one more I was thinking. I think at the very beginning when I got here, excuse me, as an example of acclimatizing zebras, I was told that they couldn't handle a variety of stimuli. And so when shifting the gate, or when shifting them, opening and closing the gate, instead of very carefully making sure the little clip dropped very softly so they wouldn't get startled, little by little, I dropped the clip louder and louder, and I was just shifting them, but at the same time acclimatizing them, right, to random sounds. And so now you don't have to worry about like the clip falling quietly or something. Just close the gate.
Yeah, and that actually brings up another thing. Vervets are just all on my mind right now. Another thing that we were talking about with the vervets is, you know, or other animals that are afraid of gates or doors, you gotta open and close them. You can acclimate them to it, or you could go ahead and pair it with some positive reinforcement. So every time the door moves, whether you're locking an animal in, locking them out, they're not even adjacent to the door, but you're moving over here, that's an opportunity to bridge and reinforce and pair positive reinforcement with door movement. You know, so what, yeah, I think that's another great one. But you got to do it. It happens every day, multiple times a day. Take advantage of it.
Yeah, and the other one I think is the feeding thing of really asking yourself, I mean, you know, we use feeding for a lot, you know, enrichment, movement. I think really asking yourself every time you're about to feed an animal, is there an opportunity to do some training here that would be beneficial? You know, and I think a lot of us do it with our animals at home. You know, if you have a dog and you've gone through any sort of training class, you've probably been taught, you know, ask them to sit or lay down or something while you put their food down and then you release them. It's like, it's a very basic thing, but with our zoo animals, we oftentimes don't use those same techniques. You know, we tend to just, you know, do the feeding in whatever way, and the animal is there. Maybe the expectation is that the training happens when they're coming, you know, you want them to shift in and there's the pile of food kind of thing. But I think if we are creative about it and look for more opportunities, I remember from that, I think it's Bastrop, where, you know, they've got the flippin', you know, I don't know how many chimps in a fairly good sized enclosure, and of course, you know, the dominant animal wants all the food and they're just trying to go out and feed the lunch, but they developed a whole technique of training and at the same time teaching the dominant animal to station, and that animal goes here while other animals are getting food. And I think, you know, we've done a lot of that, to similar sort of thing with the chimps, but so you're taking an opportunity for training, you're doing a little bit of the socialization, cooperative feeding, you know, and so it's one of those where you're really kind of hitting several things that are very beneficial. So, you know, hopefully everybody is, you know, giving some thought to that, you know, before you just go ahead and feed in whatever your normal way is, whether it's, you know, here's just a pile of food or here's food being put into an enrichment, you know, thinking about, can that diet be used to help you in your training goals?
We taught the zebras are recalled that way, because they get snacks throughout the day, and occasionally, well, we started pairing a particular sound with an emergency recall, come to the sound, whether it be on exhibit or down below, whatever. And we started randomly, one of those snacks would be the recall session, where you call them somewhere and then distribute it there, one of their favorite snacks of the day. So it was like multitasking.
Yeah. Anybody have any other examples of it?
I just want to make sure it's fine.
Anybody have any other examples of where feeding, they've been able to use that in a training fashion?
Counting the weavers in our Savannah aviary is not an easy task. There's supposedly 17, maybe. So one conditioning thing, since we give them worms and that's their favorite is the mealworms, is I started standing right at the door when I first went in to feed and waiting until they all gathered in the bushes. Once they're all there, and I got 3 or 4 counts of relatively the same number, I'd take my handful of worms and scatter it out, and that was their first offering of worms for the day, was after I was able to get somewhat of a count. Yeah.
Next, you're going to be assigned specific purchase, right?
Yeah, totally, yeah.
What I know me and Myra have been experimenting on 6 is that we've started trying out doing target training at water lunch outside the window. We've been trying that off and on. And in the morning with the babies, we've also been feeding them just in the chute. If they go in the chute, we'll just feed them in there so they'll get acclimated and comfortable being in there. They're doing pretty well so far with that. Just a simple part that we're already doing it in the morning. But we're just feeding them in there, so it's kind of training without having to be formal.
I was gonna say one problem that I've kind of faced on 7 is that lemurs were really only trained for the most novel things and fruit, and they only get 15 grams of fruit 3 times a day. So what I did is I took every type of vegetable option that they had, and I was just staring at them during all their meals and watching which ones they would eat first. And then I removed it from their actual diet and took the portions that they would get, and then I turned it into another fruit cup essentially. So now I'm training off of vegetable cups in addition to their fruit cups, and they know that they only get these novel items from this time or whoever else is with me. So in this way too, not only before they were only getting trained maybe once a day, now I'm able to train them anywhere between 4 and 5 times a day. And very quick. I mean, 15 grams is like nothing. So just even if it's like a station or nose target here. So it's just, I've really seen a big improvement, and they're all really eager to come and train.
I think that's a really good point. And I know we're going to be talking a little bit more about food tomorrow, I think, but I like the video. I don't know how many of you guys saw it today with the giraffes in China, I think it was. Yeah. And did you all see that on the table, the reinforcement was just a pile of leaves? You know, so I think it is interesting, and I think we've seen this in the lab situation too, where they have super rigid diets, and, you know, they might be working for, you know, some little biscuit that, you know, many of our animals would be like, you know, bring the grapes and the dates and the raisins and go home.
We started doing that with the tamarins as well. Electra in particular was very, very fickle with what she wanted. So we started pulling the banana, which was a scheduled part of their diet, out and saving just for training only. Could have been grape either, but we just chose banana, and now, well, they got scrambled a little bit, but now they work great for the banana. There's no question of, oh, do they want apple today? Or maybe they want
Or Fruit Loops.
or Fruit Loops. No Fruit Loops, no junk foods, just the banana and worms.
Yeah, and the other, somebody, and I can't remember who's made me think about this, the other thing where feeding can be very beneficial is if you have a space in the animal's environment that they might be nervous of for some reason or another. Like, I think I was thinking of Leonard maybe, where he maybe has some adversity to going into the chute area. Is that who I was hearing about recently? I can't, anyway, I mean, we do it all the time with elephants because they have the restraint chute, which, you know, can be a place where, you know, unhappy things happen, but we feed them in it all the time. So that is another place where, you know, you can look for unique training opportunities. If you have a physical place in your environment that the animals are not comfortable, you can start working on pairing some of their regular feeding, you know, at that location.
I was gonna say I have a perfect example about 2 weeks ago with the 2 black lemurs that had a lot of health problems this year. So we're not able to put them out on the exhibit as much, so we've really been utilizing that outdoor space. But one of the lemurs is partially blind, and so he doesn't like going out there because he can hear things and see shadows. So we started training him out underneath that environment, and more often than not now we come in the night house and they're both out there hanging out, getting some sun, and so it's really good.
Yeah, great.
We did that with the zebras. To get them first desensitized to going back to, or I guess acclimatized, see, I gotta make sure I get the words right. To going back into the back stall where they're not comfortable, we would feed all their normal diet items out in the comfortable area, but we would feed the very special diet items like browse that was all extra in the potentially frightening area, so that if they did not go back there, they weren't getting shortchanged the basic diet, but if they did go back there, they got dessert. And now, of course, you can't keep them out.
It's really strong.
And I mean, really, you know, we know, you look through the literature, science shows us that animals would prefer to work for their food. So I think that kind of dovetailing on everything that you want to be opportunistic and take advantage of all these potential training times, animals would rather work for their food. So whether it's going into a squeeze or into a scary area, you know, that's still working, or actually doing targeting and descents and whatever it might be. All of those are working for food, and we know that that's preferred to most animals. They will choose to work for their food. So it also fits with the welfare aspect.
Okay, I think we're up on time.
Thanks, guys. Great discussion.
Great share.